medicine. Her research interests continue in the field of cancer biology, focusing on the role of gap junction intercellular communication. Recently, her work extended to the field of spheroid and organoid development. She utilizes the new technology called PG matrix to recapitulate 3D human tumor-like spheroids. Dr. Nguyen is the author and co-author of over 35 peer-reviewed articles and 80 research abstracts. She has mentored over 45 research students, me included, luckily, and has advised over 60 veterinary research scholars. She has invented multiple US patents and has obtained over $2 million in sponsored research activities from federal agencies as well as the private sector. She was the recipient of the 2011 University Diagnostic Faculty Award for the mentoring undergraduate students in research and the 2017 Inspiring Leader in STEM Award of the Insight into Diversity organization. And this is just a small fraction of the accolades that she has acquired over the years. She is the sitting chapter president of the Society of Toxicology of the Central States chapter. She is an ambassador of the NIH Loan Repayment Program. And she served on the 2013 through 2016 on the Literature Review Committee at the National Library of Medicine, and she's an active reviewer for PubMed Central. She teaches environmental toxicology, environmental health, and cancer pathogenesis at a graduate level. And she has recently been elected to the Faculty Senate for 2018 through 2021. She's also the director of the Veterinary Research Scholars Program, which is a very intense research-driven program. But above all these things, she is my mentor to me, and I'm very grateful for that. And it is my great honor to introduce such a dedicated, hardworking, and driven individual. So please help me in welcoming Dr. Annelise Nguyen.
Thank you, Daniel. Everyone can hear me? I just turned on my microphone. Okay, great. Thank you, Daniel. And one correct, we don't have Department of Toxicology here at Kansas State University, so it's Diagnostic Medicine Pathobiology. I want to thank Dr. Priest for the invitation to be here, but mainly thank Tani Martinez for putting my name in this seminar series. So if you have a chance to read my short description of this talk and why I mentioned breast cancer, women health, why I mentioned about innovation, why I mentioned about STEM, and DSP, for example, I sponsor more than 20 students from Development Scholars Program because I am the product of that program at Texas A&M University. So I think that that's important to recognize those kind of programs truly help students to drive forward. And also women health, I raised by my mother, a single mother, and I will share with you those stories. So when I took biochemistry, I fell in love with hormone regulation, estrogen, the role impact on human health, female health, and women health. So that's why I mentioned that in my description, as well as innovation. When you're in hardship, you have to be innovative. And that skill set that brought me to where I am right now. Okay, so the next few minutes, 40 minutes I've been asked to share is my journey. The first 10 years I lived in Vietnam right after the Vietnam War. So I'm going to take you through my journey as stories after stories about my experience in Vietnam. So that's the title of my talk. And so I'm going to share with you stories and my background, and you're going to see those pictures, but don't jump to those pictures yet. I have to set up the situation first, and the bullets. So the fall of Saigon really truly changed million lives, South Vietnamese lives, okay? And the particular date for students is April 30th, 1975. So the stories began where I was only 1 year old, but I'm going to take back one more day prior to that day. In April 29th, 1975, my dad instructed my mother that morning to pack and we're going to leave the country. But he has to go report back to South Vietnamese Air Force military base in Saigon. For those of you that don't know Saigon, it's now known as Ho Chi Minh City. But prior to 1975, the South Vietnam capital is known as Saigon. Okay. So my dad instructed my mother to pack and ready when he come back that night to leave the country. So he went to Air Force military base, and the story began where my mother waited and waited. And on April 30th, 1975, the announcement was that the North Vietnam has captured the White House of Saigon. So we lost. The South Vietnamese war is over, and that is no longer a war, and that North Vietnamese has captured the White House of the South Vietnamese, the White House. So that's where my mother knew right away that my dad did not come home the night before, that at the age of 30, she's a single mother of 4. I was 1 year old. My sister was 3, my brother was 5, and my older sister was 7 years old. So with no career, stay-home wife with 4 kids, she's, I'm going to jump to many stories because I was not at that age where I remember things, but I'm going to jump to the time when I remember things, and it's when I remember she will take me to collect food. So we would line up and collect rice, corn, sugar, and salt. So she's now shared with me that those days, that's the only things that we can have is those basic food. So in order to get meat, she had to sell a lot of things to acquire meat. So she sold a lot of things in terms of her assets, even her wedding band. Okay, so I'm going to share with you a story that I clearly remember, and that is she fed me and rice, and then she put tiny little meat behind the rice in the spoon. In order for you to get to the meat, you have to consume this big chunk of rice. And so that's my memory of how my mom fed me. And so that I was about 3 or 4 years old. So then one event that changed her life completely. She struggled to earn money, and I remember she was telling me that she purchased a sugarcane juice stand to earn some money. It didn't go very well because she hired her niece to help out with the stand, and her niece got her hand caught into the juice press. So that didn't go through too well. And then she sold cloth, everything that she can to raise money. So one day she saw her old friend from Catholic school. She went to Catholic school, and there's another whole story behind that as well, but I won't get into it. And her friend realized that she needs a job. And I'm going to share a story and set up what kind of job this job entails. After 1975, communists came to South Vietnam. They don't have roster of who is who. So they depending on others, neighbors, to list out what those residents' previous occupations and jobs and positions in the military. So they came out with this new rule implementation that if you have an occupation, you cannot do that job. You have to start brand new kind of career. So that's how that it's playing field, that everyone start out equally. So her friend knew that she needs a job, and they have some kind of job that they cannot do. So in order for my mother to earn this job, she have to be trained in this new career. So this is a great opportunity for her friend to train a new skill to my mother and do the job that her friend previously was working. And that job is that her family owned jewelry store. And they cannot sell diamonds and jewelries and golds because they already have those names out there. And the communists know what these individuals doing prior to 1935. So my mother was a perfect candidate to be the new face in the market and this business. So my mother agreed to be trained and sell the asset for these individuals, in return earn commission. So then few months, my mother will start this business of running and selling diamonds and jewelries and gold. And back in 1975, after 75, money is no longer money. Everyone go back to precious stones for trading because it's no longer valid, right? Money is no longer useful because we no longer have the system implementation in banking. So that's my mother's new career in trading jewelries, diamonds, gold. So she's has to venture off to do this where I stay home with my sibling. So she asked my mother, my mother's sister, which already have her own family of 9 kids. So this house now consists of 13 kids with ranging from 15 to 1 years old, and I was the youngest. So then my aunt will look after all of us, and she tend to have a bad habit of loving gambling, cards. So that's the first pictures that I'm going to share with you. So she played and taught all of us to play cards with her, and she realized, and this is at the age of 4 or 5 for me, that I have photographic memory. And I would tend to beat her many times. For a 5-year-old girl to play very well in cards. And let me introduce you. A deck of cards is 52 cards. But Vietnamese also plays another kind of card that's 112 cards. And that's on the other corner right there. So I will know how to track cards, and I have photographic memory. So then she came up with this idea that she would train me to play different type of cards, and that she will take me to gambling joints for her advantage. And so I would literally go from day to day to these gambling joints and track cards for her. And that was my first unpaid job. And so I played both, just a regular deck of cards as well as by Tisak, which is the name on the box right there. And why you ask a kid can go into a gambling joint? This is no infrastructure, you know. And if you can bring an individual or gambler that need to bring their kids, their daughter to a gambling joint, so be it. They want extra hands. So that's why a kid can go into all these gambling joints. So that's where my first adventure of learning and understanding people behavior and tracking and knowledge. So then my mother realized what my aunt was doing and did not like that. And so she decided to have me with her and not staying home with my aunt. So then she's been conducting so many business transactions. And my mother, again, finished high school, stay-home mom, very little in terms of knowledge about maps and directions. So she realized that I am such a useful individual to remember directions. So I have many, many stories where she will follow instructions to get to an alley for this business transaction, and she can't remember her way out because it's alley. This is Vietnam, this is Saigon, where there's no street sign. It's all about turn left, turn right, take 2 left, 2 right. And so I remember how to get back home at the age of 5, and now I'm probably going towards 6. So then she realized that, my goodness, she can help me getting back to certain directions so she can focus on the business transaction and then allow me to help her with directions. So that's the other part of the slide is where I was her helper in finding ways home. And then another story is that I think is a moment in my memory when I was growing up is where she took me down to a village, a fishing village. And I did not know what she was doing. And it turned out that she earned enough money to pay for a boat to escape. And this is a fishing boat people. If you have seen many images of the fall of Saigon, and she decided to escape and went down to this fishing village to check out this boat and to move forward with her plan to escape and to other countries. So I don't have that image, a picture, but I've just downloaded this from Google Map and showing what kind of boat we're talking about, a fisherman boat like this. And I remember where you have trees and sands and just a few boats that people are trying to collect money and taking them out to the ocean journeys. And so she came back and ready to escape. And I was 5.5 years old at that time, with 5, 7, 9, 11 years old kids with my mother. We were about to leave the country and went back to Saigon. And she woke up and chickened out and did not go forward with the plan. So after, I'm going to jump to now, and she asked her, why did you not move forward with the plan that you already paid to escape? And she now shared that she had a dream that the boat would sink, and it's true. 3 weeks later, she received the news that that boat did not make it out in the open. And there are so many stories like this that I think my story is not alone. And so that's why I just want to share Fishing Village. That's where it's referenced, where my mother decided not to move forward with that. To add another story to this, what happened to my dad? So my dad made it out in 1975, April 30th, and he came to the United States. And in order to become a U.S. Sponsor someone, you have to become a U.S. citizen. So why I share that with you is because my mother found out that my dad in the United States. So just the notion that you escape to Thailand, you have someone in the United States can sponsor you over. Where at that time, there's no communication between Vietnam and United States. You couldn't even sponsor people. So by taking this risk of taking your family somewhere to another country, you have that ability to do so. So after that incident, my mother decided she's going to stay put, and that she's just going to wait until there's relationship between United States and Vietnam, so that my dad can sponsor us to United States. But we don't know when, and that's why it's that 10 years. And I'm going to share with you why that timeline is so important. So then I also want to share another story of my childhood, and that is a lot of my experience is in the open market. And I remember many, many times where my mother came home very sad and distraught and anxiety is because she lost her wallet. In the time where people are just trying to survive, pickpocketing and stealing and crimes is a norm, okay? And for my mother to lose her wallet, to lose a asset, a transition, that someone asked her to deliver that diamond, the gold, or the money to deliver those items, is just devastating. So she lost her wallet, she got her pickpocket. So then my other job was to look out for a pickpocket. And so I get to learn how to screen individual to approach my mother. So in the open market, I would clearly see people approaching my mother, and I will signal her and say, 2 o'clock, a man in black approaching you. Or 6 o'clock, 11 o'clock, I didn't even know how to read time, and I know how to position an individual that approaching my mother. And these individuals track you, who has what. They know individual just made a transaction and has money, has diamonds, gold carrying in their purse. So they track my mother, and so I was the one that literally tracking who's approaching her. And I think these skills helped me very much when I recently went to Paris with my husband, and we were on the double deck bus, and I told my husband, look at that guy, he's gonna approach this person. And in Paris, if you're at the Eiffel Tower, there's a sign saying, beware of pickpocket, yes. And so that was something that I can tie back to the present. And I had those skill sets to spot individual. Another skill set that I learned from all this years in Vietnam is to watch people behavior. And you can't learn that from textbook. Being in the market, waiting for my mother to finish a transaction. Just watching people dealing with each other, emotions, and that I think is just so valuable. Who I am right now is to be inclusion, to be in the present, and observe our surrounding. So that's another story that gives me a sense. I don't know if there is a pointer here. Okay, so those pictures: gambling, pickpocketing, escape by boat that my mother did not go through. And so now I asked my mother, why didn't you put me in school? I know that you told me you didn't want me to enroll in the communist system, but is it really truly that? Or was I so helpful with your business transaction? And she say, yes. You were my GPS at that time. So I came up with girl precision system. And so I was her GPS back in those days. So I came to the United States, and so my father became U.S. citizen. In 1981, there's a lift allowing Americans to sponsor their family over, and that to change immigration, family and reunification policy that in place. So my father came here in the United States, became U.S. citizen, and that's when he started the process to sponsor his wife and 4 kids in the United States. And I arrived here in the United States in 1984, and I was 10 years old. So I came here, lived in Houston for our first year, and that was a very interesting story as well. I start mid-October, 4th grade. My dad decided to enroll me in 4th grade at the age of 10, which is a year or so behind than the actual 5th grade or 6th grade. And I came home, and of course I didn't do well, because I'd never been in school before, no class, didn't know how to read and write in Vietnamese, let alone in English. And my report card was just devastating. It's all F. And I came home, I told my dad that I know my math. Should not getting wrong on my math, like an F in math. I can do math. Okay. And my dad came with me to school and shared that I think you're misunderstanding my daughter. She's really good in numbers. You know, she's told me that she constantly get wrong in those problems. And the reason was the teacher told my dad was that I didn't show my work. That I have to carry numbers, borrow a 10, and then cross over. I can do all the math in my head. And that's the reason I got all those problems wrong. So the second report card came around. I have all F and an A. So that's my 4th grade. I did not pass 4th grade because you need to pass all classes. And then Another things that made my dad move, that I think that's the major things, is we live in an apartment down in Pasadena, Texas. And my dad purchased this gigantic van. He was thinking, you know, I just have a wife and 4 kids going to join me. So he sold his sedan car and bought this gigantic van. I don't know if you realize, but this back in the 70s and 80s, the van has curtains and a little bed inside. That was the van that he purchased, and realized that when he picked us up at the airport, Intercontinental Airport, that we're about this high and skinny. And I was 10 years old, 20 kilo or less, 40 pounds or less at that age, and all my siblings the same as well. So this gigantic van parking in this apartment, and it took up a lot of space. And what happened was that our neighbor constantly opened the door and hitting this van and make a lot of scratch marks. So my dad approached this neighbor saying, can you be careful opening your car and not damage the van? He found out a few weeks later that this neighbor put sand in his gas tank. So constant events that he decided to move to another place. And we moved to North Houston, and that's the decision that has changed my life completely. And that's instead of repeat 4th grade, I skipped 5th grade and start 6th grade. So I start 6th grade, my 2nd year here in the United States, on the right age, all A's, and the rest is history. So I moved, and then another year we moved to Greenville, Texas, and that's where I grew up. Most of my grade school through all the way to high school. And then I went to Texas A&M, and I met my husband, and I have to mention my husband, Michael Tran. But before that, I recently shared this story with my mother and asked, do you have any picture of our house? And she, very good at computer. She loved Facebook. She's contact her old teachers from the Catholic school, all the nuns. They're still alive, you guys, 90-something in Vietnam, and they're still alive. So she contacts all her teachers now, go through Facebook, internet, email. And so she found this picture of our house. And here is our house, right here, that I grew up in for the first 10 years of my life. And I realized something very significant of this picture. And I grew up having a nickname called Stinky Baby. Why is it Stinky Baby? Because my cousin was looking after me 3 or so years old, or 2, I don't remember the story, but I just remember that my nickname is Stinky Baby. That she dropped me in a sewage drainage. I was one of those babies that, trapped in a drainage and have a rescue. And guess what? There is a drainage. It's still there. And so that's where my nickname Stinky Baby came from. That is still there. And the picture, the person here, still our neighbors. That he's lived there for all those years that I can recall. And this is 2018. It's the current picture. Google Map. It's amazing. That my mom shared this picture with me. Okay. So I went to Texas A&M University, and I met the other half. Which the reason I mention this is because he has his own story as well. He's the one of a few that escaped 1975. So he was on those boats and came to Pendleton Camp in South California, if anyone of you heard of that. And he got sponsored out from the camp to Fall City, Nebraska. So his sponsors from a church, Catholic church, sponsor him over to Fall City, Nebraska, and start the new life. So Dr. Tran is my other better half, and he's a podiatrist in town, and he went to Texas A&M as an electrical engineer. He's a martial artist, which is right here. That's when I first met him. I thought he was an alien, and it looks very strange. And I didn't realize that he actually have an alien driver license. And so that's him, his head. And so he's watching me right now. And so that's Michael here, and he has a martial art class as well after hours. If any one of you want to learn karate, taekwondo, in Vietnam, he can teach you free. And guitar and classic car enthusiast and travel. The reason that I mention him is because his story is very much different. Same scenario in the sense, but he started his early life here as an immigrant. And for me to come to the United States, I already have a father established. It's totally different than a story where he's an immigrant on day one. Okay. So as Daniel introduced, I came to K-State, and with those background, I think it's really helped me to mentor students. And I mentioned about my first patent, but these are the ladies that help on the way to shape. And I'm so passionate about training female scientists. And these are just fantastic students I had in the lab. So in the next few slides, I'm just going to share with you those images here when I arrived at Kansas State University. And so those are students in my lab, and Daniel is one of them right now and doing all this work as well. One of the moments at K-State that impacts my career is when I present my work at the Smithsonian in 2015. And I was asked to convey our research to fifth graders, museum goers, because you have to assume that majority of the population at the fifth grade level. And that I do very well. And then another event to raise money for STEM arts. And so one of the work that I submitted was selected to raise money for STEM here locally in this city, Kansas City as well. And the work here, the tissue, the image that you see is an actual breast cancer tissue that was stained with biomarkers and used as art to showcase those biomarkers, and selected to present and display as the contemporary arts, okay, in 2016. And then I attend this auction off to raise money, and Tani was with me, and Tani, the one that captured this picture, is Denton. He's my student, and now he's a physician, and he was there to bid the artwork. So that was fantastic to see. Former students at K-State was there, and he shared with me that I haven't changed all these years. And he lost a lot of hair. Another moment that I represent Kansas State is when I chair the National Library of Medicine. And I think I was the youngest chairwoman ever. And so those are the images. And I was present with some of the recognition director of the National Library of Medicine, Patricia Brennan, at the end of those sessions when I chaired it for 4 years. Something I've also mentioned, I want to share this as well. I think it's so important. When I was a trainee at Texas A&M, I had an opportunity to host a Nobel Prize. Alfred Gilman over that corner right there. He's the founder at this discoverer of G protein. So when I lead a group, a veterinary research scholar program, and we have a keynote speaker, the only veterinarian to win Nobel Prize, and that's Peter Doherty. I just have to get K-State students to meet this person because that's such an impact on your experience as a student to meet a Nobel Prize. So when I was at this conference, and the students tend to shy, not approaching these well-known individuals, I just grab him and say, yeah, I want you to meet K-State students. And so this is an image of our K-State students, veterinary students, meeting the only veterinarian who won Nobel Prize. And do you know that he discovered that T cells specifically recognize an antigen. And that's his discovery. And that revolutionized the field of immunology. Why I'm so passionate about girls who research our world here. When I came here, that's the age that I learned science, right? That I learned about experiment in school educations. So when K-State asked me to involve with the GROW program, I'm there. And so all these years, I've been very active in the girls research our world. And here are some just pictures of those workshops. And this pictures right here just tell you everything. The excitement. And one story that I want to point out just recently, this little girl, and she was in my workshop, and she's very shy, but yet not, and asked me, excuse me. And I say, yes. Are you Vietnamese? And I say, yes. Me too. Just that sign of, questions and relating to you just melt my heart. So that little girl is just so sweet. And I told her that go home, tell your mom that you met another Vietnamese scientist. My spare time, this is non-science. So the reason I'm very passionate about education in sixth graders, you need a lot of patience to be with these ladies, these girls. I have a lot of patience, you guys. I build Legos. In my spare time, this is about this big or so. And these all consist of Legos. So something that my coworkers might not know. I do have a lot of time somehow. And I travel. And this is something that Shalin here shared, that you have to share your stories about all the places that you've been. And so here, just a pic image slide of my travel through the years. I've been around 44 countries and 48 states in the United States. So the one that just captured the moment is the Golden Temple in Kyoto. It's just beautiful. And then what's the other one is Last Supper in Milan, right? And then Machu Picchu. And the recent one right here is Hanoi. I had an opportunity to represent K-State, and 5 years ago when K-State decided to open up a mission office in Hanoi. I use this image is because I share that to my environmental class, pollution. That's the part. You just stand outside, you see particles just falling down. And so that's where it's not fog, it's not the bad day, it's just pollution, air pollution. Why is that? The burning coal. And that's what happened. Another one image here, which is in the United States, and that was a wow factor for me. I've been to so many presidential museums, different tombs, different battleships. We have a theme when we travel throughout the United States. And one year we go to Presidential Museum, and one year we decide to do the battleship Mobile, Alabama, San Diego, San Francisco, Wilmington, North Carolina. So those are the theme. This one is Garfield tomb in Cleveland, Ohio. You walked in and it was such a wow factor that you're in another world. And that's something that I thought you might appreciate, something you would never ever consider to visit, President Garfield tomb. And voila, it's beautiful. So I have only a few minutes, so I have more stories to share, but I'm going to stop here. We have 15 minutes left, and I was instructed to stop and have a Q&A. So, great.
And we'll entertain some questions, but I would invite you to use the microphone because of our friends on Zoom. It will help them hear that as well. So any questions in the room?
Thank you for sharing your story, Annelise. Before we started, you said you missed your siblings. Where are they now?
Okay, so, there's so many stories. So my oldest sister, accountant, and she's in Huntsville, Alabama. My brother is aerospace engineering in Dallas, Texas. And my other sister, computer science in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm here as toxicologist. So I'm going to add a little bit more about my dad. So when we moved to Greenville, Texas, it's only 2.5 hours away from Texarkana. And that's where the sponsor, the group of sponsors that sponsor him to United States, live in Texarkana. So every year, holidays, we would drive to that church to thank his sponsors for sponsor him from the camp and change his life completely and mentor him, show him the way to go back to college and settle here in the United States. So I think it's very important that I share that with you, and that those are times where church step up to sponsor individual immigrant refugees, and everyone pretty much help out as a whole country. And like my husband, the church from Fall City, Nebraska, and my dad, Texarkana, Texas. Yeah.
So thank you, first of all, you do your grow experiences and helping out these young girls. It's awesome. If you had an opportunity to have a longer conversation with that one young lady that was Vietnamese, what advice would you give her?
Well, now I learned that I do know the parents and the aunts here. So she has the whole entire world asset to me at any time. But just grow, and I think aware, being present. That's the most important things. And I think what I learned that first 10 years is observation and observe before you act, because that's a very important skill that I learned during those 10 years. And kids now don't have the interaction anymore, human interaction. And that's what I want her to engage and communicate and meet me in person, right? And not email and reach out. So I think it's very important. And we have students here in VSA, Vietnamese Students Association here as well. And I engage with those students. They are over my house for dinner and just having a conversation, stories. Yeah, thank you. Yes. Yeah. Kelly here.
So you're the advisor of the Vietnamese Student Association. How has that impacted your personal and professional life?
So I was very active at Texas A&M University. I was the officer of the Vietnamese Students Association. So when I came here in 2001, I knew right away that I want to be part of the Vietnamese Students Association. And so I took over Grace Wong's position at that time, and I know some of us in here know Grace, and Grace was the advisor for the Vietnamese Students Association. So I took over that position from her, and how it impacting me professionally. I recruit a lot of good Vietnamese students to work in my lab. They're awesome. So I can remember two individuals. Alan Nguyen, he's a mechanical engineer, and I like to hire cross-discipline. I gave him a challenge in my lab to build this machine for us in the lab using biological system. And he did a fantastic job. And he has the skill set to measure pressure, cell membrane pressure. And so he worked for me 2 years. He decided to go on to graduate school, got full scholarship to Notre Dame, a PhD in aerospace right now. So he's his 4th year at Notre Dame. So it's impacted me tremendously in the sense that I interact with students. So there are so many of us that involved with students organization, and this was one of that I decided to pick to be mentor and interact with. And I get a lot of students from Vietnamese Students Association. Okay.
So I noticed you talked about Catholics quite a bit, like your mom went to Catholic school and the Catholics helped sponsor.
My husband, he's Catholic,
okay,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
So, but do you have a religion?
I'm Buddhist. Okay. So in Vietnam, that's a great question. Religion is not a big thing. My aunt is Catholic, the one that loves to gamble. She's Catholic. Why my mother is a Buddhist that went to Catholic school, because back then when when your parents having a hard time, a challenge of raising you because you're need more discipline, you tend to being sent off to a Catholic school, all-girls school. So that's the reason my mother went to Catholic school, because she's have a lot of challenges that my grandmother could not handle at that time. So that's why she's in Catholic school. So there's no religion in the sense that it's very defined. In my household here, my husband is Catholic, I'm Buddhist. So it's a way of life, a way of living. And so I don't see a big difference. But yeah, my mother went to Catholic school, she's Buddhist, but other reason is because my grandmother needs help to raise her.
There was a major change when you went from 4th grade to 6th grade and you weren't doing well. Was it just the move, or was it new teachers? What was the difference?
Yeah, the move to a different district, right? And I adjust very well. And I think the innovation part in this description, you tend to build a very quick skill to adapt. And I just need time to learn the language. And so that's what that move, yes, new district, new environment, but it's also, I just need time to adapt, and I adapt very well. And I start 6th grade with no challenge in terms of adjustment. The adjustment is the language, not the grade, because I don't know what to compare to, right? The story is very different for my siblings, because they went to school in Vietnam. They already started, 7th grade. She was already in 2nd grade, 3rd grade. So she continued the education throughout those 10 years, 9 years after 1975. They have a hard time because they think differently. So they struggle in school because they have to think and translate, where I work with a blank sheet of paper. So I think that's also in part due to the adaptation and the changes that I didn't have that my siblings did. And so if you see my sister, get to know them, they are very different individual than me. And the story's very different because I was with my mother all those 10 years. I was with her at the transaction, all the business transaction. I was down the fishing village. My sisters and brother were not there those times. So they don't have that interaction that I have with my mother. And I remember this. The first night came to United States, Pasadena, Texas. My mother went to my bedroom, my bed, and was very troublesome. And I knew what she was going to say. And she said, "Sweetheart, I can't sleep with you anymore. Mommy, I just have to sleep with Daddy now." Because I shared bed with her for 10 years, right? And so I knew, I was like, I know that. But that was something she was so concerned that my siblings didn't have that interaction with my mother. But I have that, so good questions.
So I've been to Greenville, Texas, and I was wondering what were some of the biggest adjustments to culture for a middle school or high school student, and how did you choose science? Was there a teacher?
Yes. Greenville, Texas is a blessing for me. It's a fantastic small town, 25,000, and it's Raytheon. That's where my dad works for 30-something years at Raytheon. It's a science-driven town. My teacher in high school, PhDs in chemistry, PhD in physics. And so that's kind of influence where we, the graduates of that high school, have done so well in education, in career. But then at the early days, and if you've been to Greenville, Texas, what does sign say? Blackest land, wise people. Why is that? There's a huge sign saying the blackest land, wise people. Because the soil is so black that it's great for cotton, growing cotton. And that was the marketing back in the early days. But now it's a different notation, right? So that's where Greenville, Texas is known for, but it's not any by mean races are having challenges in growing up as a Vietnamese family. It's fantastic. And Raytheon brought in a lot of scientists to work at the company. And with that, there are spouses that are teachers that came and taught us at the school system. So it's fantastic. And that's why it shaped my science career. I took all the APs. I started Texas A&M University, didn't even have to take chemistry or biology because I took the AP exams. So I start out with thermodynamics as an engineering student and calculus 3. So because I took the AP exam calculus 1 and 2. So those are things that I think the schools really, truly shape. And however, I mentor a lot of students here. Some students, the system failed them. And Texas education is the one that educated me. And I think it speaks volume on our education. It's all about how the system works. And I understand that completely, yes.
We have time for one more quick question.
As you know, you being my mentor, you've taught me so much, but I think the one thing that I've learned from you the most is lifelong learning and how important it is. And as you coming from a disadvantage in learning and then being an immigrant and a minority to getting your PhD and working in academia, what would you say to minorities who are struggling to find their position in the world and their voice in the world and how they can master lifelong learning?
Wow, that's a big question, Daniel. And we can talk about it all day tomorrow since you're coming to work. But I think baby step. I did not know that I'm in this academia. I thought I'm going to be a CEO of a pharmaceutical company, you guys. I have the business sense. I have my MBA. I was very much engaged in the business negotiation. I'm very engaged in that world. And I landed an academic position, and I fell in love with it. So I think that as an immigrant, I didn't even think about it. And I share with students, how do we know what we know if we've never seen it before? So, and go back to your previous questions, I didn't know any better, just moving forward. So do your best and then engage and learn those environments. So I always encourage my students to know their environment and what the best at that moment and moving forward. So that's what I did, and I didn't think about the future, too far future, but the present, and appreciate the past and what you learned from the past, and then integrate it into the present and be at the moment. Yeah.
Let's show our gratitude one more time to Dr. Nguyen.
Thank you, everyone. I have so many friends here, so thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you again, everyone, for being here, and have a great rest of your day and week. And if you're a student, or have a happy fall break.
Is that good? I have so many.